Well, welcome agency operators. In some cases, you are also running the dual role of sales team leadership, but all in all, you are at the helm, and I guess finding it sometimes, if you don't have a lot of people around you, a lonely environment. So the whole idea of a CREAMstream online is to just give you an idea of what's going on around the traps, keep things current, obviously give you some fantastic gems to take away, stimulate that business of leadership. It can be a lonely practice. As you can now see, I'm in lockdown and been spending an inordinate amount of time locked away in the office and learning very, very quickly how, as best I can, to share and I guess, give the advice that's necessary to owning and operating real estate businesses. Again, the purpose of this platform is to stick to things that are current, but always as it relates to CREAMstream. The acronym, of course, is Corporate Real Estate Agency Model, or if you like, Corporate Real Estate Agency Modeling. And the beginning of that is for us to talk about and stick to an understanding of what we call the 7 essential elements that sit inside. Now, on a week-to-week basis, I'll most likely have a direct theme. It just so happens that this theme is the 7 essentials, but going through each of the 7, and I'll be focusing on one on an almost weekly basis, and then talking about the products that we have that sit right behind and support you in the development of each of those essential elements. And the first one, of course, is the client. Now, this is not necessarily your responsibility, apart from this is actually as the agency owner, and I do need to make this point almost as we jump out of the gates so that you understand the context to which I'm talking. I see that leadership is broken up into 2 areas. Several of you would be familiar with that are sat in and around the CREAM operating system. And that is that, you've got a leader who is essentially the agency, most of the time principal and or owner. And in that role, in that capacity, you're working on the business, on the outside of the business. And it's a funny environment, that one, because even when I'm talking to salespeople, they spend such little time working on what they're doing or stacking back or extricating themselves from the day-to-day role that they're fulfilling. And I know many of you might even find this difficult and looking at it from the outside. But this is the pure and unadulterated role of the CEO, of the COO, so the Chief Executive Officer, if you like, Chief Operations Officer. It's your job to oversee the health of the business. And as my good friend Andrew Coronas would also always say, that's my job is the bullion, to make sure that the overall business is prosperous and profitable. And I'll give rise to the responsibilities that sit inside this domicile. The second role in leadership that's essential, and many of you might be doing this in a dual capacity, is that of sales team leadership. And we cover this one off at STEAM, sales team engineering and management. It really should be sales team engineering and leadership, but I couldn't very well call it STEEL. I just thought that would sound right. Of course, my good friend Sebastian Battieri's on here, and one of the things some of these salespeople are akin to saying these days is that the house always wins. Well, it would be doing it no good by using or sliding that acronym in of STEEL. But sales team leadership is basically about working in the business. And I like to think that even though you might be doing dual roles, that as soon as you practically can, you create a severance or a separation around the two. We are, and I can almost tell you invariably, the moment that we've done this inside of businesses, inside of real estate agencies, whether they're at the startup level as an SME, whether they're even just, a very small 2-man operation, all the way through to knocking on the door of being medium-sized, before moving into scale, or whether you've even got multiple offices. The moment I've had a severance and you've got a sales team leader that's working autonomously from the CEO, so the leader of the business, everything starts to get better. You know, you'll find that you've never really got time to step back and have a look at it from the outside because you're so busy working in it. And I just want to make that distinction before we go, and as I start to move into the 7 essentials. So the first essential is that a client, you need the procurement of the business in terms of the clients that you're operating on. And the only discernible area that you seem to get that, as far as I can tell, almost wholeheartedly, is in the property management portfolios. At least you've got control of the landlords or the management properties there. But I must say that even there you get some problems, especially when it comes to the sale of those properties with agents, and they sort of start to think that they own the clients. Well, we're going to show you how to create that severance over a period of time. We're going to show you how to wrestle control in the equitable model. And if I was even to make a discernment between sales team leadership and that of the CEO's job is, yes, to make sure that the business is profitable in terms of income. The sales team leader is to make sure that we are running productivity effectively so that we do have income. And I guess the reality is that the setup of the way the business is structured to remunerate salespeople, but also indeed remunerate the company and forge a definitive profit margin, that job befits the CEO. And the STL, which is a sales team leader, their job is to fulfill, so they're handed that charter, they're handed with the structure already in place. So the sales team leader need not worry about whether or not the business is profitable. They just need to worry about the procurement of new and incoming business by way of prospecting and the opportunities, of course, listing those properties. This is why the mantra of sales team leadership is in fact GML, which is to get more listings. And, you know, ensure that that productivity is coming in, that we are then selling those listings, and that's happening on a progressive basis, that it's getting easier and easier and easier. So you see how each role befits the two. Sometimes you're stuck in the middle doing 2, or could be even worse that you're doing 3. And I've got to say that, you know, that old saying of 2's company, 3's the crowd. Nothing could be truer in this regard. It's maybe manageable to have the role of the CEO and at the same time the sales team leader, but then move it into a selling principle and you got all sorts of trouble going on. To try and actually manage those 3 roles properly, be changing those hats and do it effectively, especially, which I often see, especially if the sales team leader and indeed is also the principal, the CEO, is also the number 1 producer, then you've got all sorts of problems. Something has to give. And I'm sure many of you have been confronted by that and are sitting here now going, well, how the hell do I get out? Well, that's exactly what we aim to show you here. So in clients, we'll be talking a lot about how you wrestle control of your client database, how eventually this improves the equitable capacity of your business and makes it worth more money. And so, and of course, it gives it longevity. It gives it that, ability to just keep soldiering on, irrespective of what happens in and around that. But that's just the first. The second essential element is that of leadership, and I've already alluded to that as we talk about that in terms of sales team leadership. The third is management, and I'll get to that in just a second. The fourth, of course, is salespeople. And, you know, I know I can almost feel some of you rolling your eyes. I mean, every time I talk to an owner of a business, one of the problems they have, the most obvious issue that they have is typically around salespeople, whether it's trying to recruit them, whether it's trying to manage them, whether it's trying to retain them, whether it's trying to figure out how to remunerate them. And I find this funny, you know, I can honestly tell you in all businesses per se, the least manageable resource inside of any business is that of people. When it comes to real estate agencies, when we realize that it is also the primary resource, you can understand from time to time when I say to leaders that you're a bit of a thrill seeker for having got involved. But from where I sit, the subject of leadership absolutely fascinates me. It still does to this very day. And we will talk about this with great regularity and give you all the tips and understandings that you need by running metaphors, sometimes nameless, sometimes with names, depends upon who they are and who they're associated with, and it will make a lot of sense. And salespeople absolutely in and around recruitment. I can honestly tell you, at the CREAM level, at the CEO level, one of the primary functions you have is that of recruiting, all the way from new salespeople, which is just a processed approach, all the way through to bringing on board skilled people, detoxing and retraining. This is a skilled component. And as I say to a lot of the leaders in and around that, I said, look, if you've enjoyed selling real estate, well, when you get the business of selling salespeople into your business, well, that's a whole new ball game. Because each time you're bringing one of those people in, if they're bringing in, for argument's sake, $1.5 million, and you've got the business structured properly so that it is retaining a 30% COP, which I'll talk about later, a 30% margin, well, then invariably you've just made a $500,000 sale. And if I could get incentive in place for you around that, imagine, even if you were bringing someone in that could bring in 600,000 and there was $200,000 profit, and you made 5 of those sales per annum, well, you've just made $1 million worth of sales. That is all, pardon the pun, cream. So we'll be talking about that, and as it relates salespeople, marketing, of course, in and around the most powerful vehicle that we have these days. Most real estate agents, not much less real estate leaders, think about marketing in the capacity of advertising. I'm sure that if you've actually had a strong background in sales, and I mentioned marketing, we quite often start thinking about marketing in terms of, are we able to salvage or claw back money, and salespeople selling marketing, or more to the point, advertising dollars and advertising revenue coming in. And I've got to say that this is the least understood component, but we want to talk to you about marketing and how you can leverage it powerfully to not just maintain presence inside your marketplace, but these days, marketing permeates every facet of the real estate business. Yes, it does plays a vital role in advertising, in leveraging value and protecting value of property, definitely in creating presence and bringing clients to you, and client retention and retention of market share. It plays a role in recruitment. It plays a role. It's just about every single facet, and certainly even in and around property management. You'll hear me be talking about that with great detail, of course. Technology, we'll be introducing that to you, and some of you might be drunk on technology. You might be just about fed up with it, because it seems that every single day someone's got some new fangled gadget that they throw at you. One of the things that I'm determined to do is give analysis to that, and I look at it and I say, show me how this piece of technology is directly linked to greater profitability. Show me where the return is. And that's what we need to look at, and that's what we need to pay a lot of attention to. And then last, but by no means least, prosperity. And I sometimes think that this entire element is left alone. I mean, you can see the ramifications of that now as we've had, from the fallout of COVID, and the real fallout's yet to come, let's face it. There's so many people talking about recovery, and then early on last year, of course, they were talking about either a V-shaped recovery or a U-shaped recovery, and I've said openly, I think it's going to be an O-shaped recovery. I think that, as the full impact of the economic, disaster that befits us is rationalized, that you're going to see a change in the market. You're going to see a lot of people put properties on. I believe it's going to become oversupplied, and we'll have that radical shift that you have in and around marketplaces. Despite what might be going on now, despite how you might be feeling as a leader, you have to be prepared for what's likely to head our way. Now, of course, those agencies that have set up the structure of how income is distributed inside their business, as they go through this economic change, they're going to be fairly robust and able to survive any economic condition that comes their way. Of course, if you're finding there's difficulty rationalizing that, or you're starting to feel the pinch right now, it's probably because you haven't given enough attention to your structure. And even now, as we're into lockdown and everything else that goes around it, I'm seeing a lot of leaders make the same mistake that some of their salespeople are making, and just sitting back and taking a bit of a break, taking stock, and thinking that the market will return the way that it is, rather than adapting, reacting, and setting it up. And I'll allude to all of this as we go through this, these 7 essential elements right now. And, you know, not least of which, in terms of prosperity, the number one thing on the number one issue, I should say, on the card is remuneration and figuring out how do you do it. And I've seen in the last 12 to 18 months, there's been a huge burst of different types of models that have come into the real estate space. I'll appraise them for you. I'll show you how they fit or don't fit. Do not fall under the illusion that, you know, you could just move to one of these models without looking at those that are successfully doing it. And in some cases, those that have made radical shifts around this have been growing the whole time anyway. So it's a natural progression for them on the scale length. But, you know, where do you fit in if you're a startup? Where do you fit in if you're a growing enterprise, a single office, and starting to sort of get some feel? Where do you fit in, even if you have been successful, or you're struggling right now or looking for the answers to figure it out? I think it always comes back to that age-old question, and it's one that befits all of you as you sit here right now. How do I want my business to look? You know, you've got to begin with the end in mind. You've got to sit there and say, you know, in 5 years' time, how do I want it to look? 10 years' time and 15 years' time. For me, the number one key, I believe, and it's one I'd like to share with you, has always been inside of a real estate business, has been to make yourself redundant. I get it that the business starts around you and you perhaps being a good salesman or a good technician, as they say, and then thinking, well, I should chance my arm at this, and then you throw yourself in, and all of a sudden all this shit comes at you and you're like, my God, if I had known this, I might have reviewed it. In fact, I was actually saying yesterday, I was online with Sebastian Viteri, and I just said, you know, to be honest with you, I look at some of these models right now, and if I started out as a salesperson, I would go into a com-only model. I would actually get one of those big percentages because of what's between here, and I know how to manipulate that. I'm not sure how long it would last before the owner of that enterprise realized that I was making 4 or 5 times what he or she was, but that's what I would do because of what I know inside the skill level, and I wouldn't be looking at it definitively, and I wouldn't be looking at to grow it in longevity or anything like that if I was going in as in the salesperson's capacity. But that's not where you're sitting. Most of you are sitting in the fact that you've taken a huge financial risk in owning and operating a real estate business. Now you have to look at how you actually grow that business with other equitable partners in it. And a wise man once said to me many, many decades ago, and this is how I like to share it with you, you just basically have to make sure that your equity and income is constantly on the rise. Don't worry about so much about how you're diluting that risk, diluting your shareholding, in as much as as long as you're diluting that risk, but your wealth is increasing, well, then you've made a positive decision. You've made the right decision moving forward. So it is that I say to all of you that you've got to look at the prosperity curve all the time, but at the same time be looking at all these pillars in tandem. So just around the traps, and I'll just show you what we've been doing very successfully. Number one, inside of steam with our sales team leadership. So we now have sales team leadership where those leaders get online with yours truly every week. In the last month, so we were, this week, for those of you that want to listen, every second week, so alternate weeks. So next week at this time slot, if you jump on board, you could be in on Steam Room, which is where we talk just about working in the business and working in and around salespeople and leadership and influence around those salespeople. We've made some marvelous advancements. Steve Lovegrove's McDowell Real Estate, he's now at 2 offices, and there'll be lots more talk around that as we grow, 35 odd salespeople. And he brought in Kelly Kanara Bat, who's his sales team leader. Kelly was virtually his, I would say, offsider, like a PA role, and she's moved into sales team leadership, and her performance has been nothing short of extraordinary. No blight on many sales team leaders that I've worked with over the years that have come from directly from sales, but she, at the stage that she's at, in the space of probably 12 months, she's leaving a lot of experienced salespeople for dead in this role. And in some areas, I can honestly say it's been an advantage for her in that she hasn't sold real estate. There's been the obvious difficulty in and around communicating directly with buyers and sellers, but her thirst for knowledge in this area has just been extraordinary, and her pragmatic approach to leadership and being brutally honest about what's in front of her has just been extraordinary. All in all, I can now confidently say to you that all you need to become a great sales team leader are the qualities of a leader, and the rest can be learned so long as the interest and the passion that drives leadership is there. I can see that it can work in an extraordinary manner. So this week we talked about the scoreboard. Again, if you're in an office and you don't have a clear scoreboard up, and it's all a little bit like, we're not quite sure, and you have to sit there and count on your fingers how many listings you got, or ask a bunch of people, there's your first problem. As Vince Lombardi said, if we don't have a scoreboard, if winning isn't everything, why do we have a scoreboard? Well, I say the same thing to you. So jump on the Steam, have a look at it, get hold of that scoreboard, get it into your office, start to ask some questions about it, and start counting. So if you're also the sales team leader, that's pretty much a must. But if you've also got a sales team leader in place, it's a must for them, and it's an easy one for you if you're working on the company to be seeing this at a glance. Then, of course, we come back to the prospect or the client. This, of course, is related to our prospecting systems. If you don't have it in place, if you haven't installed it inside your business, you might want to look at the Origin system. This is where the company retains a significant amount of income, which then becomes an incentive for the company to procure clients through prospecting and hand them off to salespeople. The benefits of this particular system, which I will allude to and talk about, and your installation of it, are just undoubted. They are just beyond belief, because not only does that income allow you, not only is it profitable, but it also allows you the capital to keep reinvesting back in that prospecting system and grow the business. This, of course, then means that salespeople are not required to be focused on the prospecting element of the business. You're going to attract a better caliber of salesperson under that guise, particularly if they're then allowed to get out there and run prospecting in and around it. Again, I'll spend a lot of time on this as the series goes, as we go on, every fortnight. I might just have one that's just dedicated to understanding how Origin works. I'll expand on the overall pay structure inside Prosperity and all that sort of thing. But at the moment, in and around Steam, we are majorly focused on working with the sales team leader and showing them what they need to do on a daily basis. Then showing them what they need to do, which we've just done last week, on a Monday morning to get the sales engine into play, all the things they need to do around salespeople in monitoring, managing, and mentoring them. Then we move to the Tuesdays, which for us is usually sales meeting day. So it's meeting day, how to run successful sales meetings. Kelly's meetings are extraordinary out there. I know many of you sometimes struggle with this, but it's something that we can show you how to do in setting up agendas, in getting all the information before you go into the meeting. And that's another area that I'll spend time on, showing you how those meetings are set up between you and management. But again, that's more to do with Steam and to do with sales team leadership. And then of course we're showing them what to do on, for the rest of the week, what to do on game day, which is either a Saturday or Sunday, your major days for showings. What to do around setting up prospecting regimes that then create prospect flow. What to do up until the 10th of the month. What to do in and around the 20th of the month, and what to do between the 20th and the 30th in setting up plannings so that the beat goes on. And you've got monthly planning meetings, you've got quarterly objective meetings. Everyone knows what they're aiming for. Salespeople are focused on results-based activity in a progressive manner. So that's been fairly strong in and around our Steam management thing. It's been fantastic where I meet with those leaders on a weekly basis and we get to discuss the challenges that befall them, and we're building those habits that allow you to be making sales through other people, other salespeople, of course. Then as we get into sales trainer, why don't we just come back to recruitment, property careers. So this is our breeding ground. This is for newbie people. Age is not a barrier, but we've also got with there what we call the PC3M program, which is the property careers, 3Ms, which is monitoring, managing, and mentoring these sales associates at the sales associate level. Now, this doesn't preclude new salespeople when they come in. It's basically showing them how to get a foothold into the market, and we take them from beginner to winner, if you like. We show them a distinct plan of how to either break a market, or if they've been working in a market for some time, how to rejuvenate it, but this time how to take market share permanently. That's the long-term plan. In this short term, we call it foothold, and we show them how to create presence in that marketplace and get initial contact with their marketplace and become a player in a very short space of time. Not this long game bullshit that you hear that a lot of trainers bang on with about hustling and grinding and all that sort of stuff. There's nothing attractive about that. Let go of it. Remembering that you as the CEO, your job is to also attract experienced winners and get them to come and join you on your team. Now, if good salespeople are hearing that they come on board with you and all they get is hard work and out there trying to wrestle and find the clients on their own, that's not very attractive, especially if it's not much more than they've got in the same place. But if you can demonstrate to them that you are looking at a level where they won't have to prospect anymore, and one of the episodes that we'll be talking about here in the very early in the next couple of weeks is about how you create a connection and how you have experienced salespeople that might be with your competitors right now coming over to you. In short, here's what I'm trying to talk about. If there are $1 million performers out there and I give you the equipment to run a presentation with them in and around your business, you can change the whole dynamic by which they're looking at your business and bring them on board. Because the fact of the matter is, those EBUs that you see out there, most of them are targets. The vast majority of them are run at a level where the salesperson is earning way less than what they could be were they not on board with you. And I don't care if they're being given 70% and all that sort of stuff. At the end of the day, if they've got themselves and they've got a couple of people employed in and around them, most of the time, if they're bringing in about $1 million, they're lucky if they're taking home net about 200,000. Now, Blind Freddie can see that that's roughly 20%. Let's say I'm wrong and it's coming in at about 250, 300. What I know to be true is if we get that person on board, we support them correctly, particularly if they've been discounting fees and otherwise, but if we bring them in, we can pay them an upfront salary of about 300 grand. We can support them very economically. We can still be offering them incentives on top of that, where eventually they'll probably bring in about 1.2. They're earning about 400 grand. Yeah. You're easily covering the expenses and the company's making about 400 grand out of them. Want to know how that works? Well, sure. Want to know how to sell that to prospective sales professionals and bring them on board? Of course you do. So you need to show them how it's not about percentages, it's about income. It's not about them moving themselves into the management space. It's about them improving their overall capacity to produce more by focusing on the things that they're good at, but not only good at, that they absolutely enjoy. And we'll be talking about that inside recruiting ASAP. Then, of course, there's property marketer. We want to show you how we combine technology and we utilize marketing about creating perceptions readily, easily, run by the company, controlled by the company, so that you can have a proactive marketing department rather than a reactive marketing department where you're finding yourself always either playing catch up or trying to robustly compete with the competitors and kind of just bringing in stuff that they've got simply because they've got it and you want to have it too. Don't be a follower. We want to show you how in property marketing you can be a leader and focus on what's important. You see, at the end of the day, it's basically, as long as the business is producing, it is doing it progressively, it is growing, and its structure is profitable, you'll never look back, because those profits can be dedicated in 3 areas. First and foremost, into security, ensuring that the company's secure. And I can tell you right now, with everything that's happened around COVID, those companies that I've worked with that have adopted the models, yeah, it was a tougher road for a long, long time, but they have money in the bank. They have security in that they own real estate. They've got all sorts of things going on around it. They've built these businesses robustly. And yeah, it doesn't feel good that you've actually had to dip into all those security measures to keep the company flowing. But hell, that's got to be a lot better than having, I mean, I actually had leaders of some of those businesses go to me, oh, well, we didn't qualify for the grant because it was so profitable. I mean, can you tell me what the problem is with that? I don't kind of fucking get it. Doesn't make any sense. I mean, you got to pat yourself on the back and say, thank God that we have got this part of it worked out and we do have the structure that enables us to go forward profitably. So there's lots of things that you can see that we will talk about. I hope that this will invoke for a lot of you just some simple questions, things you'd like to hear more about, things you'd like to discuss, and I'll make sure that it sits inside of this presentation each and every fortnight, and then together that we start to grow those 7 essentials inside your business structure, and that you start to move from a startup or a medium-sized enterprise into a more corporate structure. Don't be afraid of that word. Corporate just means collective, and a corporate business collectively has way more strength and is way more secure than any other type of business. I've said this a million times before, and I'll say it again as gently as I possibly can. Any business that is stupid, any real estate agency practice business that is stupid enough to say that they are boutique right now is really just saying that they're under-resourced. So I look forward. Please send through any requests that you got. Mark with a K at corporatemanager.com.au, or feel free to call me at any time. If you haven't picked up on it, I love discussing leadership. I absolutely love discussing building corporate real estate models. So you can call me on +61 410 592 165. And I look forward to catching you next fortnight, if not next week, on the Steam Room. This has been CREAMstream, and thank you very much for joining us.